Hey, it's Sandra. Welcome to another episode of Asexualise, My Sexual Life. This is a place to be for education about asexuality, all things asexual, and I share my asexual life journey in order to help you in yours. So please subscribe and hit the bell icon right now. So in this episode, I'm going to be discussing, have you ever come across the word attachment styles before? Do you know what they even are? Do you know what attachment wounds are? And how they affect your friendships and relationships, and what can you do about them? My name's Sandra Bellamy, and I'm a self-published author. I owned my own book publishing imprint of Quirky Books, and this is my best-selling book, Asexual Perspectives, on Amazon. So, yes, attachment styles, attachment wounds. I just have to let you know that I'm not a doctor, a medical practitioner, or a therapist, or anyone like that. So, first of all, one of the things I have to say is when I was researching content for my Asexual Guide to Sex book, which I'm still intending to get out, I learnt about attachment styles then. So, I've known about attachment styles, I think it was from the year before last. It was either last year or the year before when I first started learning about them. And it was really informative and woke my eyes up to the fact that I have difficulties because of previous attachment wounds, and also I became aware of attachment styles in general. My attachment style is anxious attachment. So you have in general four main attachment styles, and attachment styles is how you're attached to your caregiver when you were a kid. So your caregivers are usually your parents, but you might have mostly been taken care of by your grandparents or aunt and uncle, or maybe your mum was out to work all the time and your sibling looked after you, this type of thing. So attachment styles are from caregivers growing up, but they can also be to do with when you formed friendships or relationships later in your life. And this is how we attach to people. So how we become attached is usually through how we were trapped as a child. Now, if you're not aware of the attachment styles, the main four are securely attached, which is what you need to aim for, anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, and anxious avoidant. So secure is the best one. From the knowledge I have so far from what I've done in terms of like listening to specialists on the topic, if you like, about 50% of the people have a secure attachment. The other 50% of the population don't. And secure attached person will be confident within themselves, self-assured, will not need the approval of other people, will not need reassurance in, in the main. They will be confident in themselves, will be equally happy in a relationship as they would be out of a relationship on their own, equally happy in social situations as well as spending time with their partner. So there's a great degree of equilibrium. And if someone says to that person things that they're unhappy with, disappointed with, finding things difficult, if you're with a securely attached person, they would take those things on board if they're securely attached. So if you have a problem or difficulty in the relationship or friendship, you'd be able to go to that person and say, hey, I'm feeling distressed right now because when you did this X, Y, and Z, it brought up a trigger for me from my past. And I just wanted to let you know how I'm feeling. So this is healthy communication. Now, if this person is secure back, then they say, tell me more about this. Let me understand you, this type of thing. So they are a safe person, usually. A securely attached person is a safe person. They're not going to shout at you. They're not going to avoid the topic. They're not going to push the problem you've got with this situation back on you. They're not going to gaslight you. They're not going to make you wrong for telling them the truth and for telling them how you feel, even if it's something they don't want to hear and it's something difficult you're dealing with, right? But if you take the other 50% of the people that aren't securely attached, these people have behaviors that are not secure. So this can pose difficulties in relationships because they need different things from their partner and they often have clashing needs. So if, for example, you take someone who's anxious attached like me, I've done quite a bit of work on myself, so I'm more securely attached within myself, if you like, than I used to be, right? But if you take an anxiously attached person will have developed this anxious attachment in childhood, usually to because of caregivers, the way they were treating that person as a baby, as a child. And so if someone's got an anxious attachment, it's often because there is something lacking in the relationship between that person and their parents or their caregivers, whatever caregivers they had at the time. And this is often when there's a lack of emotional needs being met, maybe emotional neglect, where the the child doesn't understand where they stand with that person. There's no reassurance there, because obviously as an adult, you have to reassure yourself, validate yourself. But if you're in a securely attached relationship with a parent in childhood, the parent would be validating your feelings. They'd be asking you how you feel. They'd be comforting you when you're upset and in need. They'd be there for you, but allow you to make your own decisions without there being consequences if you make your own decisions in a negative manner. So it'll be like, whatever decision you make, I'm here to support you 100%. Rather than if you make that decision, it's going to be the worst decision of your life, and I'm going to have to deal with the consequences. That's an unsecurely attached person. Do you see the difference? It's not safe for you to be able to talk to someone about your feelings and emotions if all you're going to do is get backlash, someone not understanding you, not validating you, and putting you down, belittling you, and making you feel like you can't speak to them and you're scared to talk to them, right? So if it's an anxious person, it's often because in childhood they were worried about what their parents thought of them or felt about them if their parents didn't reassure them. They were worried that they might have done something wrong. If, for example, the parent can't regulate their emotions properly by themselves, then even the slightest thing that the child might do that might be wrong, such as knock some milk onto the carpet or something, the parent would flare up and be like, "What do you think you're doing? Rah, rah, rah. You know, I've just bought that milk. This carpet, like, has only been down for 2 years. It's a mess. Why did you have to do that?" This is a person who can't regulate their emotions, and the child is left feeling bewildered, unsafe, anxious, terrified, maybe, of being shouted at and stuff like this. Right? It's a bit of milk on a carpet. It's not the end of the world. Right? You can get something to clean it up. You can go and get a specialist hoover. Yes, it might be a bit of extra work for the parent, but the parents have the kids taking on the fact that they're children. And part of the problem with children developing insecure attachment is their parents, when they were a kid, expected the kid to behave like an adult when they're a child. When you are a child, you have needs that the parents should be fulfilling. Not just basic needs of food, clothing, and shelter, although that should definitely be in place. They should be tending to your emotional needs, your intellectual needs, your spiritual needs as well. They should be there for you emotionally to comfort you. And they should be protecting you, not another abuser. So if you're in a family that had another family abusing you, they shouldn't have taken that abuser's side. Or if you were being bullied at school or had someone nasty in your life, like a boyfriend or something, they shouldn't be taking the side of the abuser. They should automatically be wanting to protect you and finding out what's gone on with you and how you're feeling. But all these types of traumas can end up going through years of your life if your parents were not there for you at all. They were just completely shut down, avoiding difficult conversations, avoiding talking about feelings or emotions. Then you learnt that path of behavior is the way to be. So then you develop an avoidant attachment style where You avoid difficult conversations. You avoid sharing feelings, thoughts, and emotions. You often do people pleasing activities because you don't want to rock the boat. That can be for anxious as well. Um, but you want to avoid conflict. So someone who has an avoidant attachment style, you want to avoid talking about feelings, emotions, and everything, because often the parents in that situation, they made you fend for yourself, and or you had to look after yourself because it wasn't safe looking at, being around a parent, and you learnt to avoid difficult conversations because it led to arguments, shouting, maybe alcoholism, drug abuse you had in the house, this type of thing. So if you're avoiding it, it's like you use it as a way, you shut down and you disassociate because of your past experiences. Now, if you're an adult, you have to be able to admit that these things happen to you and have an awareness of them and accept them. And this is the first part, major part of healing, because you cannot heal from past attachment style wounds and past attachment wounds full stop if you are not aware that you've even got these problems. And this is what usually causes issues in friendships and relationships. You can't have a healthy relationship with someone who shuts down and who won't talk to you about difficulties and problems in the relationship. It doesn't work, right? You cannot do that. And there's also a fourth attachment style, like I said, which is anxious attachment, which is a person that's in between. Sometimes they're really anxious and they need extra reassurance and they need to know the answers now. They're worried, they need to speak now. And then other times they'll just avoid the conversation, difficult conversation. They'll go out of the room, take a walk, and you might not see them for hours. So this is a person that's very up and down. They've got mixed. And that they would come from a background that had mixed signals all the time from their parents, most likely. Right. So you didn't know where you were coming or going with them. But again, this can make you very anxious if you have a parent who 1 minute is really nice to you, kind, caring, supportive of you, and there emotionally, and the next minute they're like brushing you off, don't want to know, don't want to talk to you. This creates a up and down seesaw effect, which is like an anxious attachment. So there's a lot more to these things than I've said. There's specialists in them. I'm not a specialist in them as such, but I'm learning about them, knowing about them, and getting more and more knowledge. Knowledge is always power, but actioning that knowledge is wisdom. And you need to be able to assess your own behavior in your life and look at it as if you're looking from an outsider point of view. Now, an anxiously attached person will need extra reassurance, usually, will need open, honest communication, will need to have an awareness of what's going on in their partner's life, and they will need to be able to deal with problems and difficulties in a relationship as quickly as possible because they're anxious to get it solved. And a lot of the time, for an anxiously attached person, they can't settle until things have been sorted out. So if you're with a secure person, the secure person would probably answer any questions you had without any difficulty and say, yeah, I understand that. So if you went to them and said, look, you live together, and said, oh, I'm really anxious because whenever I come home, the the dishes are all over the sink and the clean ones haven't been removed from the dishwasher. And so the dirty dishes haven't been put in the dishwasher. So every time you come home from work, it's just like a mess. Whereas the clean ones could have been taken out, the dirty ones put in, so then the sink's clean. And so you speak to your partner about this. Someone who's a securely attached person will be like, you're absolutely right. I'm so sorry. I can see that's a situation which I could have just easily resolved and had put a bit more thought into that. And I could have taken the dishes, clean ones out of the dishwasher, put the dirty ones in. And instead we got a sink that's messy. That's on me. I understand it's my fault. I should have thought, and I'll be more thoughtful in the future. So that's a securely attached person. A person who's avoidant, if an anxious person, talks to someone who's avoiding it, it's like, well, I didn't know it was in there. I didn't know the clean dishes were in there. And like, why don't you just do it? Or they'll avoid the conversation entirely and you say something to them and they're like, go out of the room or shrug their shoulders or something. They want to avoid the conversation. But a lot of the time, avoidant people will kind of put the thing back on you a lot of the time. It's difficult because some avoidant types can be narcissistic. There's sometimes a fine line between avoidant attachment and people who are narcissistic. Sometimes it's hard to make it out because a narcissist is someone who'll gaslight you and throw what you say at them back at you. But usually an avoidant will actually avoid the whole subject completely. So if you said something about the dishwasher, they might be like, what do you want me to do about it or something? You know what I mean? Because they're avoiding the topic. An avoidant attachment person in a friendship, for example, they will literally like say like, I'm upset, we need to talk. I think we've talked. That isn't talking. That's avoiding it, right? A person who wants to sort things out will make sure it's sorted out before they move on. They won't say, no, I don't want to talk about it anymore. And give excuses as to why they can't speak to you about that difficulty and avoid talking about it. Because if you avoid talking about something, you can't get anything resolved or anything solved. And if you have an anxious and avoidant person in a relationship, this can be one of the most terribly toxic relationships. And unfortunately, anxious types and avoidant types tend to attract each other a lot. You'll find in a lot of relationships, avoidant and anxious people attract because they're opposites, right? But an anxious person has often had relationships in the past, friendships, where they had their caregivers, people like that, and they weren't having their value reciprocated. So what I mean by this is, in an anxious attachment relationship, a lot of the time anxious people are like anxious to please the other person because they don't want disapproval. They're anxious to make the other person happy because they might blame themselves. And they're anxious to get things done and things resolved and things sorted out. So if they are with a caregiver, the caregiver is usually not giving to them enough comfort, support, validation. It's usually a one-sided relationship where the parent doesn't say sorry to the child, the parent doesn't respect the child. It's a kind of like respect your elders type thing. And it's the parents are wanting authority and superiority, and the child has just got to go with the flow of the parent, whether the parent's irate or the parent's just like disengaged. Right, causes huge anxiety in the child because the child's like, what have I done wrong? Why can't I do anything right? And so it becomes very difficult. And if you have an anxious person like that, and then you have someone avoiding a difficult conversation, the anxious attachment person will usually always think it's, what have I done wrong? It's my fault because they got this behavior from the parent or caregiver when they were young. And so the anxiously attached person often ends up being attracting an avoidant type person because you usually end up attracting the type of person or people you're around as a child because you have similar patterns to what you did as a child and you don't realize they're toxic and no good for you. You expect a caregiver, a parent, a grandparent, whoever was the people looking after you as a child, you expect them to be your safety net. You expect them to take care of you. You expect them to be there for you and to be safe for you. But if you can't express your emotions in a way that they are calm and collected and they are listening to you and they are validating you and supporting you, if you can't do that and you've got a parent who's like, I don't know what to do with you. I don't know why you're crying. They can't comfort you even. They're avoidant. And what happens is people in families pass these trauma wounds and attachment wounds down from generation to generation. And unless someone in the family realizes and relieves these things, so you have to realize what's going on, and then you have to stop it. That's the only way you can stop, like, generational and intergenerational trauma, is by someone in the family, at least one person, recognizing these things and thinking, "This is hugely problematic. I need to do something about it." Now, you can't change the other people. You can only change yourself. So you have to change yourself, but by changing yourself, you'll notice when other people are toxic, whether that's friends, a relationship, co-workers. The more you work on your own traumas and attachment wounds, the more you will notice toxic people. And there are quite a number of them, unfortunately. Now, someone can change their attachment style, but it can take a long time because you have to reprogram your mind, and you might never fully change your attachment style. You might only change parts of it to have less of those difficult qualities, the qualities that aren't good, the more toxic qualities. You know, you might be able to regulate your emotions more, but still not fully. You might be able to become less anxious, but still not be fully free of anxiety. So it really depends on where you've come from, your background, and also how self-aware you are. Self-awareness is the key to happiness and true success. Becoming aware of yourself and your past childhood attachment wounds and triggers is going to help you. Now, if you've got someone who's not understanding you in a friendship or relationship, if you're triggered, they will trigger you even more on purpose a lot of the time. If you're triggered, instead of you saying, "Oh, right, you're triggered. Okay, well, we all know it's your fault then that we're having this argument because you're the one who's triggered." This is an unsecure, insecure, if like person. This is a toxic situation. Some people can come together in a relationship and they could be toxic for each other, or not so good for each other, and then they could realize the patterns of behavior they've both got and work on themselves to change it and become more securely attached together. Usually it's not the stage of full toxicity when this happens. It's when you both realize you've got some unhealthy patterns of behavior, you've got some negative thinking, you've got attachment wounds and triggers that you're maybe feeding off each other, and you need to change this around. So you realize that you've both got work to do as individuals and as a team to grow together. So it's not impossible for you to change your relationship from being avoidant and anxious into more secure together. I'm pleased to say that the friendships I've got at the moment, especially a couple of them, they're a lot more secure than I've had in the past. And that is much better. I've come across a couple at least who have avoidant attachment styles, and as an anxiously attached person, that's really no good for me. These people will avoid difficult conversations. They would rather spend time on their own and avoid conversations. There's nothing wrong with spending your time on your own, but if you are doing that as a way to not deal with emotions, and you're suppressing and repressing emotions, and you're not having communication with other people because you're just avoiding confrontation, you're worried about people pleasing, and maybe you're deceiving or lying, this is not healthy, right? So everyone can spend some time on their own, but we're actually people who do need each other to a certain extent. Years ago, we were born in tribes. I personally like to spend a lot of time on my own, but I still need communication and contact, and so do introverts, right? Because some people can be spending so much time on their own that it's actually not just because they're introvert, it's because they've got an avoidant attachment style. And they're avoiding going out into the world, discussing things with people, talking to people, and having conversations with people because they're worried about what other people think. They're worried about rocking the boat. They're worried about, is this person going to approve of me or not? Is this person going to validate me or not? It's all centered around the fact that they're avoiding contact and communication with someone because they're scared, and they would rather avoid difficult conversations and relationships and connections with people because they basically have got used to disassociation, and they've got used to repression and suppression. And so they'd rather be in their own bubble that feels safer. But there's no progress in that. There's no growth in that. They can't become a healthy person because they're not allowing themselves to be able to be vulnerable with others and try and find safe people to be vulnerable with, to share feelings, thoughts, emotions. Actually, people who avoid their feelings, emotions, they have, like, a lot of the time, the unhealthiest relationships, because if you actually say what you feel and think, sometimes it's actually better to do that and less toxic, if you like, less unhealthy, because you are getting this information to each other out, if you know what I mean, in a relationship or friendship. If you are suppressing or repressing how you really feel, eventually you're going to explode, or your friendship's going to end, or your relationship's going to get rocky. These things are going to happen, right? And I've known people, and they're like, oh, I'd rather be on my own. You might like seeing people, but I don't, right? But there's an unhealthy amount of time spending on your own as well as a healthy amount of time. But if you're just on your own all the time, you need to assess, like, why am I on my own all the time? Especially if you're unhappy about spending time on your own, you wish you had more friends, then you have to look at the relationships you have got, the friendships you have got. Could you tell the person anything? Can you be honest with the people around you? Right? Or do you find that you're just literally telling people what they want to hear? You want someone's approval, you want someone's validation. So, how you change this is recognizing that you have an attachment style and doing research on Google, especially channels where they've got actual qualified doctors, therapists, medical practitioners, psychologists, psychiatrists, right? Stuff like that. And learning about the different attachment styles and finding out like, you're thinking about your background and finding out and feeling where you might fit into that. Then when you've established your attachment styles, you have to look at the different qualities of that attachment style. There'll be qualities that are qualities of that type of attachment, and there'll also be a number of toxic traits. So there's, like, traits that are more tolerable, if you know what I mean, traits that are acceptable, and then there are traits that are really very, very intolerable, like toxic. So, one of them would be possessiveness, for example. If someone's possessive over you, if someone's controlling you, and someone is manipulating you. So if this person is an insecure attachment style, they could be trying to control you and manipulate you by what they say, because they want you for themselves and they want you to believe there is no one else for you in this world, so that you will be under their reign, you'll be under their grasp, you'll be at their beck and call. You'll be attached to them in an insecure way. So it's like by going away from them, you're losing your identity because they are trying to control your identity, right? So you don't want to be get involved with these types of people. But every attachment style has downsides that can be very toxic. So, I'm aware of an anxious attachment person, and I've worked on myself a lot over the years so that I tend not to have the extreme traits. And I have worked on myself a lot to try and understand how to speak better to people, communicate more effectively, which is basically you share your feelings with someone. So if you are in a relationship or friendship with someone and that person's safe and they're not an avoidant, right, you should be able to go to that person and say, hey, when you did this, you talk about their behavior. You don't talk about them, you talk about the behavior they did. So when you did this or when you said this, it made me feel like this, or I felt like this, so when you were chatting to blah blah blah, I felt left out because you had your back turned to me and you were just involved in a conversation with them and you didn't even introduce me to them, so I felt left out and uncared for. This is the type of thing you said. Now, if this person is securely attached or done a lot of work on themselves, they'll be like, I'm so sorry I left you out. It's my responsibility as you're my partner or my friend for me to introduce you, and I was really rude in not doing that. And I'm so sorry, that won't happen again. I'll correct that behavior. If you've got a person who's avoidant, they'll be like, I don't know what you're talking about. You were stood there. You could have said something if you wanted to, or maybe that's probably more like an anxious attachment, but they will avoid it. They will avoid the fact that they caused that issue, and they won't say sorry. And they'll be like, they're like, oh, we, like, so, like, you just stood there, so, you know what I mean? Or you could have said something. They will bring it back to you like a boomerang. That's what I'm trying to say. Instead of acknowledging they hurt your feelings, or the situation hurt your feelings, the situation caused you pain. But a bad apology is someone saying, I'm sorry you felt like that. That is saying it's on you, your problem. I'm sorry I made you feel that way is them taking ownership and responsibility for the way they made you feel. So someone can apologize to you if they do, but it's not a sincere apology. But what I want you to do is look into your relationships and friendship and think, how many times has that person, if they've ever upset you or done something to offend you or made you uncomfortable or started arguing with you or started debating, which is really like an argument with you, but they never said sorry to you, but you said sorry to them. Did they ever take responsibility? Did they ever say, I'm sorry I made you feel that way? I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. I'm sorry that you feel unappreciated by me. Did they ever say any of those things? Or was it always one-sided? Because it's surprising when you're able to more emotionally regulate yourself and take a step back, how much you can discover about your past friendships and past relationships, and how there is toxicity there, or it's one-sidedness, which is part of toxicity. When things are always one-sided, you're never going to have equilibrium. There's always going to be like some situations where you're doing more things than they're doing for you, and you're listening to them more than they're listening to you, and vice versa. But you want to be with someone in a relationship or friendship where you can both say no to each other, to things they've asked the other person to do, and you're both okay with it because you both respect you have your own life and your own time. You want to both be in a situation where you can listen to each other, both listen to each other's points of views and take them on board without getting angry and shouting at each other and stuff like that. You want to be in a position where you feel you can tell the other person something that they might not want to hear, right? And I feel that in friendships and relationships, like, you've not got to do something to people please the other person, but however, you've still got to take the other person in consideration. You can't, if you're in a relationship or friendship, you can't just ignore the fact you've got another person in the team with you. A friendship or relationship is a teamwork. If you just want to do everything on your own and you want to avoid difficult conversation, you want to avoid effective communication, you just want to live in a hole or a cave all your life, then go ahead. But it isn't going to help you. You're not going to improve. And if you keep thinking, oh, something's going wrong for me, I can't get friends, or like, I my life is shit, my life is so depressive, you have to do something about yourself. No one can change you but you. And if you're saying you can't change yourself, what are you going to do? Just sit there and say you can't change yourself forever and a day? It's not true. Anyone can change. I mean, even some of the people that are depressed, they weren't always depressed. There's been times when they're not depressed, right? There's been quite a lot of the people I talk to, there's been times when they haven't been depressed. However, you can be depressed for years. I was a depressed person for years, right? But it's only when I started changing my environment. So if you're in an environment that's no good for you, right? What do I mean by environment? The people you surround yourself with, the place you live, what work, the work colleagues, right? So if you're in a situation where maybe you live with a parent, for example, and this parent is very toxic for you, and that's all you're ever dealing with. You go to work, go home, and maybe you've got work colleagues that aren't good. They don't really understand. You're going back home and then you're having like arguments with parents, or the parent is avoiding you. Like, you're saying something and they're like, like they're being really offhand, like, I can't speak to you. I'm not in, they're acting like they're not interested. They're not validating you. They're not supporting you. They don't want to listen to you. They don't care. They'd rather just stick the TV on. If you've got this type of environment, it's very, very toxic and energy draining and depressive. So you need to recognize that and do something about it. Right. And if you lack self-worth and self-esteem, I mean, that is a big thing. You have to realize that you do have qualities, experience, and knowledge that you can give to other people. But you have to be you, authentically you. And when you come to a stage of like, am I healing or not? Have I healed any attachment wounds? Have I improved in attachment wounds? Have I improved in attachment style difficulties? Some of the things that you can look for, I did a shorts video on this earlier, is the signs that you're healing is you accept yourself for who you are, but in the context of not people pleasing, not looking for approval from others, not looking for someone else to validate you and say you're fine to do what you're doing, right? Even in these last few months, I have become much stronger than I was before. I'm recognizing that I'm shifting because I don't look for people's approval. I've had someone in a business sense, which I'm not going to talk about because that's confidential, but disapprove of some of the stuff that I do, right? And I had plucked up the courage to tell them basically, I'm still doing it anyway, regardless of what you think, you know? And so this person was like, but I'm giving you feedback. I'm like, it's fine to give me feedback, but I don't have to take that feedback on board. I don't have to agree with it. I can listen to it. I can accept you give me feedback, but I don't have to agree with it. And this is so important because you shouldn't be living your life based on other people's approvals, other people's opinions of you, other people's validation of you, based on what other people think of you. You should be living your life what's best for you. I don't need someone else's approval to live my life. I don't need someone else telling me what I can and can't do. I mean, I'm a grown adult girl, for God's sake. You know what I mean? It's like, I think sometimes I'm like, excuse me? Like, why are you speaking to me like that? Do you know what I mean? Like, I can do what I want. I've been able to live on my own for years. I can take care of myself. It's nice to have secure friends to help take care of you as well. I've had an accident recently, and my bestest friend, who we've just grown and grown better in our friendship. He came over to look after me because I literally cut two of my toes on glass, slashed them in the shower. Not my fault. It was a coconut oil bottle, a jar that had been sent through the post, and it's like I didn't know it was broken. I didn't know it was damaged. But I was cleaning it in my shower where it was, and I moved it, and then all of a sudden, yeah. Anyway, so I'm in a bit of difficulties at the moment, which is why I'm not so active as I have been usually on this channel, but I'm doing my best. And yeah, so you've got to look at these type of attachment styles. You need to go. Everyone's got an attachment style. So there is no excuse for you watching this now to not go and Google attachment styles and start learning about it, to see which one you are, to see which character traits you most likely have, and be able to do something about it, right? Do not be ignorant. If you're an avoidant attachment, you'll probably be ignoring this video right now. You'll be like, oh, all right, okay, it's nice of her to say this video. That's a nice video, isn't it? And you won't do anything about it because you're avoidant. You avoid difficult conversations. You avoid yourself. You avoid yourself. You're like, you avoid the truth of who you are. You avoid the fact that sometimes you avoid the fact you can't apologize, for example. You avoid the fact that you think it's fine to not get involved in conversations and relationships and friendships when it's difficult times. You avoid emotions. You avoid getting into a serious committed relationship. You avoid emotional connection. You avoid these things. You avoid intimacy, especially emotional intimacy. There's a lot of guys on dating sites that want just sex because they don't want to get involved with emotional intimacy. A big part of that is because they'll be avoidant attachment style. They don't want to get involved in emotional intimacy because they're avoidant. So you have to be able to look at these things and realize that you have an attachment style and what are you going to do about it. The people who help themselves become better in their life. The people that don't help themselves don't become better. They go into a deeper black hole. Right? You have to understand that you're responsible for your life and only you can solve your issues and difficulties. You can get help with therapists, doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, and people who are secure and safe to a certain extent. But you can't go around putting your problems on other people. You can go around working through problems with people who you're having difficulties having a relationship or friendship with, but you can't go around expecting other people to solve your problems for you. This includes being reliant on an authority figure, right? If you are someone who believes that a counselor or therapist or psychiatrist or psychologist is totally responsible for your mental health and they have to solve your mental health issues, it's not going to happen. You have to solve your mental health issues. I'm not a medical practitioner. Like I said, this is my own personal views and education and thoughts. Okay. So seek professional help, but they can't do it for you. A therapist can talk about things. A coach is very good to work with because they help you to actually work on yourself. That's the difference between a lot of counselors and coaches. A counselor is there for you to express your emotions, get them out instead of repressing and suppressing them, and to be able to talk through. They're like talking therapies. A coach is where someone will talk to you about the problem you've got now, the pain you're in, and where you want to be to change it, and they will help you to empower you to change yourself. So if you're getting coaching, you are effectively doing work to change yourself with the support of someone, and you're recognizing you have a problem and issue and you want help, advice and support on how to deal with that issue. They make a plan with you. They make goals with you. This is what, like, if I'm doing coaching, I'll do a mixture of advice and coaching. So, coaching, sometimes people give advice in it. Traditionally, people don't. So, I do a combination of asking the person questions about where they're at now, where they want to be, but I also then go into some advice based on my previous experience. I do a combination of both because I find that most effective as an asexual coach. So, you need to find out, but like I said, coach is not a medical practitioner, right? I'm actually a fully certified advisor. I've done a life coaching academy weekend course. I'm not a fully certified uh coach because I haven't got a full coaching qualification, but I have got a full information advice and guidance diploma. I'm fully qualified advisor. And I'm not a medical practitioner, like I said, but a coach will help you to actually take action and get work done and work on yourself. A counselor just does talking therapies, but it's still very good because it lets out a lot of repression and suppressed emotions so you can stop disassociating from yourself and from other people, right? Because if you're disassociated, you're not being yourself, you're not being present for that person. That's not good for you or for them. So you need to recognize these things. And when you're on your healing journey, you'll start to feel more secure with the relationships you've got with the people that are secure also. But even those that aren't so secure, you'll start being more steadfast and strong in your and of yourself. Right. So I don't need someone's approval to be doing what I'm doing. Right. If I want to do something, I will do it. And it actually annoys me when people try to fix me these days because I'm like, I'm good. My life is good, right? Sometimes people can come in your life and try and cause a problem that isn't even there in the first place. So always remember this. And sometimes other people can come when you're having difficulties, you've got attachment wounds and triggers, and set them off even more. So really, an anxious person is better being with another anxious person, or a secure person more than anything, because an anxious and avoidant person isn't a good match. But it can work if both people work on themselves. So both need to try and regulate their own emotions. The anxious person needs to let the person avoidant know how they're feeling, but the avoidant then might need some space and say, okay, well, I can't answer your question right now. I need to go and think about it, but I'll get back to you within a certain amount of time. So then the anxious person's like, okay, this person said they get back to me by 4 o'clock, and then they do get back to you by 4 o'clock, you know? So the avoidant might need more time out, more space out, because they start feeling smothered in relationships. They start feeling smothered in friendships. They might need more time out. But if they are growing themselves and in a relationship with an anxious attachment, they'll realize that the anxious person does need reassurance, and they'll provide a degree of that reassurance, but it might not be immediate. The anxious attachment person might have to have the avoidance saying, hey, I need to walk around the block. I need to just be having time out but then the avoidant needs to come back and actually deal with the situation at hand, right? So you're like coming together where the anxious person's not getting an immediate response like they would usually like, but the avoidance not going off for days or absolutely tons of hours, and your anxious attachment partners and what the hell's going on, you know? So it can be worked out, but you have to realize that you've both got difficulties, not just one person. And if another person's not willing to say, hey, you know, like, I realize I've got avoidant issues and I'm avoiding having conversation with you. If you're there trying to solve a problem in a friendship or relationship, and you're just basically trying to solve it on your own because the other person won't open up, they won't share their thoughts, feelings, emotions, they won't do it to the degree where it's actually properly sorted out, then you're onto a losing battle because you can't have a relationship or friendship with just yourself. It's like punching the wall. I mean, it hurts, you know, and you don't get anything out of it, right? So you have to be aware of these difficulties. And there are a lot of guys that they are, unfortunately, guys are still very repressed and suppressed in their emotions. A lot of guys come from family backgrounds where the father is like the provider of maybe the breadwinner still, the provider of, you know, food and water and shelter, and the father figure is like very shut off emotionally, voiding emotions, very controlled, doesn't hardly ever cry, believes a man is all about being manly, never showing his feelings, never showing his emotions, which is not healthy. It's repression and suppression and avoidance. So, this type of masculinity that's gone on for years is actually toxic. A healthy masculine guy is protective of a person's feelings while being able to express himself. A healthy masculine guy is protecting his woman's heart from other women and from him hurting her as well. So he's providing a sense of protection. He's providing a sense of love, care, and a supportiveness. But he's also being empathetic. He's also sharing. Like, my friend was in an accident, motorcycle accident, and I'm hurting right now. I'm feeling really upset, you know? We've been friends since childhood. They're in hospital. I'm finding it really difficult now. A healthy guy will be able to say this to you. Not like, oh, I've just got to get on with life and deal with it and shut off, you know? So look out for these type of things, right? And the more that you get to be around healthier people, the better it is, because then you'll start to realize when people are toxic and negative, and you'll just end up going away from them because you can't have a healthy relationship with someone who's like that. Someone who's not prepared to work on themselves, someone who blames everyone else for their own mental health problems and own difficulties and doesn't take any responsibility whatsoever for their life and thinks everyone else has got to fix their problems, everyone else has got to fix their issues, right? Some of these people, they write inspirational quotes on their Facebook. Don't be fooled by that. I've seen loads of guys on dating sites that do this. They'll write inspirational messages like, oh, they're such a good guy to be thinking that way, but they don't really think that way. They don't really understand the meaning behind it. They're just posting it to look good and look cool. And you see a lot of guys online looking cool with the clothes they wear, the poses they do. But it's like, where is the heart? Where is the soul? Where is the empathy? Where is the kind and caringness? Where is the connection? Where is the I'm sorry I hurt your feelings? Where is the I love you. I care about you. Let me help you. Let me protect you in a healthy way. Let me take care of the food shopping for you. Let me carry it up the stairs for you, you know? Like, you know, helping you in a healthy way, not because you're incapable of doing that, but because, you know, it's just nice to save your legs, isn't it? It's nice that they want to just help out, you know? So you want to find someone in a relationship and friendship that's not patronizing but helpful. You know, someone who wants to help you because they want to help you, not to get anything out of you, not say, oh, I helped you, now you've got to help me. Someone who's transactional is not good to be around. Love and friendship and relationships of any type is not about transaction. Like, what can like you know, you do something for me, then I'll do something for you. Like, you doing something just to get something back. That's not caringness. Like, I do this channel because I love helping asexuals. I've been on this channel since 2015, right? And I just like love giving educational content, and when I learn something myself, I like to help you, you know, because I just am that type of person for loving asexuals. I just care about asexuals so much and asexuality in general. And I hope that you get value out of these videos. I hope you learn something, even if you just learn the fact attachment styles are a thing and you go and Google attachment styles and you've learned that one thing now. You're like, wow, it's something else about myself that I never knew. And that can shoot you off into loads of different avenues and directions to help you overcome difficulties, problems, darkness, all this type of thing. If that's all this video does for you, then it's done its job, And so, go and get professional help, see a therapist, see a doctor, psychologist, psychiatrist, or get a person who's a coach and mentor who deals in attachment wounds and triggers and childhood trauma attachment. If you're looking for a therapist, you need to find someone who's childhood trauma specialist for these type of things, usually for childhood trauma attachment, right? But if you've got attachment wounds from adult relationships, then a therapist who's trauma specialist is still going to be good. Trauma informed is not the same as a trauma specialist. A trauma informed therapist knows basic knowledge about trauma. They know certain generic things about it, but they don't specialize in it. It's in order to get very good therapy, you have to try and find a therapist who specializes in the type of trauma you've had, whether that's childhood wounds, past relationship attachments, for example, narcissism and this type of thing. You need to find the one that actually fits your situation. But just generic trauma is not the same as specific trauma, and different traumas require some different actions, And unfortunately, very, very bad in the UK. Like, I tried to get some therapy on the NHS and I knew what they were saying because I've done a lot of work on myself already. I knew that what they were saying was wrong. It was really, really bad advice. They were invalidating me and they were saying the type of information that actually encourages romantic, abusive relationships, encourages it. Right, because when people say, "Oh, well, the other person must have had terrible childhood themselves. The other person must be have so much difficulty in their life, blah blah blah," right? You've probably heard this. This is invalidating your feelings. This is basically saying your trauma and the way they've tracked you isn't worth even talking about because they've got their own issues. Like this is not this is dismissing your feelings and invalidating you, right? But there's a lot of NHS therapists, the trauma informed, not trauma specialists, and they are literally teaching people, oh well, if someone's abusive to you, right, but they still love you, right? Healthy love is not the same as loving someone and abusing someone. Right? If you are in a relationship, a romantic relationship, for example, and that person is abusing you in any way, that's not love, that's toxicity. It might be love in a toxic way. Is there such thing as toxic love? I think there's love, healthy love, and there's toxic love. And people would argue that toxic love isn't even love at all, which is fine. They can argue that and they might well be right. But I think if you are defining a toxic love, if you think it's a thing, then I believe there is such thing as a toxic love. It's when you have really strong love feelings for someone, but your whole relationship is toxic, major parts of it, at least. And having a therapist saying, well, that person's got their own issues, that is no doubt probably going to be true. But if the person you're with was abusing you, that's no excuse for abuse. They have themselves to answer to. They're accountable. They should be accountable for their actions, right? And a lot of the NHS, unfortunately, is teaching people that, oh, people must have had issues in their own life. So that makes, it's not okay what happened to you, but, we can just see that they have problems. So that's it, right? This dismisses your feelings, it invalidates them, and it doesn't hold the perpetrators accountable for what they did. And when we're going through healing of trauma, we need to be able to hold these people accountable for what they did so that we can understand their bad behavior. Because if we don't hold them accountable in our minds, We just think, okay, this is acceptable because, there's no comeback on what they're doing. So they can just get away with it by holding them accountable and saying, hey, this was wrong. I was treated badly. I was neglected. I was abused. I was made to feel like I didn't matter. I was made to feel like I was unloved and uncared for. Unless we hold these people accountable in our minds, we don't have to go up to them and go, I'm holding you accountable, especially with someone who's not safe. You don't want to do that. But in your mind, if you don't hold this person accountable and deal with the consequences of them actually abusing you and waking up to the fact they could have been someone you absolutely loved and adored. I've been in two long-term relationships. Both of them were abusive, right? But people in the outside world a lot of the time didn't see that because abusers don't want to show that to other people, right? But you know what's going on. And when you're having a counselor or therapist or some professional, they need to be able to say to you, this is wrong. You need to be able to have boundaries, and you need to be able to know and understand what is wrong behavior. Because if you don't, and you don't hold that person accountable in your mind, you're likely to get that type of person again because you're literally not holding them accountable. You're literally thinking, oh, well, that person's like that. This is just normal part of a relationship. This is just normal the way it is. Some people are just like that. That's not acceptable, right? And only when we stop tolerating bad behavior, hold people accountable, and think it's not acceptable, can we start being our own personal power and healing ourselves a lot more. So a lot of therapists, actually, especially on the NHS in the UK that I'm coming across, are actually being trained incorrectly. And who am I to say that? Well, yeah, who am I to say that? I'm not a medical professional. I'm just someone who's learning by myself, right? So you could just pay no attention to what I'm saying whatsoever if you want. That's fine. It's your perspective of what I say, take it or leave it. But I've actually told a therapist in writing, in emails from the NHS too, that I cannot be having any treatment. One of these people, therapist, she helped me before with something. But as soon as I started talking about relationships, past relationships, because we were talking about work before, but as soon as she was talking about past relationship with her, it's like she was a different person. And I was being blamed that I was not at the level that I needed to be in order to receive that information. When actually, in my opinion, I'm far more advanced because I'm realizing that what they're saying is actually causing more toxicity and is enabling the bad behavior, the abuse from the past, rather than holding the people accountable and saying, hey, this should never have happened to you. And these are the type of behaviors that should be happening with you, for you, to you, and enable me to understand what a healthy relationship looks like in order to be able to not get into these types of relationships in the first place. But this is not what they're doing. Right, they're given very limited resources in the NHS these days, National Health Service in the UK, and they're being taught certain things. And I've written back to them and said, this is not the way it should be. This is why people end up in abusive relationships, because it's like, oh, the guy will say to you, which he said to me in the past, but I love you. Like these people who have done some really bad stuff verbally and some physically, not sexually. The people I'm thinking about. I have had sexual abuse in the past, but that's not why I'm asexual, because I had my I had sex after those experiences. And for me, I just put them down to a bad experience in my life and moved on, right? So, but what I'm saying is any type of badness in a relationship, like where it's physical abuse, it can be sexual abuse or mental abuse, emotional abuse, whatever abuse it is. If a therapist is telling you, well, they probably had a lot going on in their own life, but they still love you, that is enabling someone to continue to abuse you. If someone is telling you they love you, but they are hurting you, abusing you, that's not love. That's not true, proper, healthy love. But the therapist might go, but they still love you. Just because someone says they love you doesn't mean to say they actually love you, truly love you. A loving, caring, kind person would not be abusing you. They would not be dragging you across floors, pinning you up against furniture, shouting at you in the streets, this type of thing, right? And they shouldn't be saying stuff like this. And so I want you to know that you need to look for the qualities in a person that are good. Someone who's kind, respectful, caring, open, honest. They might not be all these things straight away. If they have got attachment wounds themselves and attachment difficulties, they might need help in a caring way to see where some problems lie. So if they're very shut off and not telling you much, it might be because they have had trauma in their childhood with when they spoke up, they got a punishment. So you have to understand that sometimes in a relationship, some people who are shut down, it's because they have been unsafe as children or in certain situations, and the parent or person was shouting at them, was dismissing what they said, was basically repelling what they said and pushing it back, and so it wasn't healthy. They felt they couldn't speak up and be themselves, right? So you have to be able to be a person that says, hey, I want to know you, I want to understand you, because some people, they're so closed off and shut off, and they don't share their time and world and journey and feelings, emotions with you, not because they're being really nasty. I mean, some people will do it because they just are completely avoidant and they don't want that type of level of intimacy or connection or anything. But others might just be shut down because they have been punished every time they opened up. And they might feel worthless and useless and like they haven't got anything to offer the world. So therefore, there's nothing worth talking about. You have to encourage them and inspire them to know that it's okay to share these things with you and that you love to hear from them. You love to know what they say because you do find them interesting. You find their life interesting. You find them interesting. You want to know about them, you know? So there's certain things that can be worked on. There's people that can be worked on, relationships that can be worked on, but don't ever think that abuse is okay in the name of love. It's not. Whether that's parental love, grandparent love, teacher love, colleague love, friendship love, sibling love. If someone going, "Oh, I love you," but yeah, I'm punching you, or someone, "I love you, but I'm dragging you across the floor. I love you, but I'm pinning you up against the wardrobe. I love you, but I'm shouting at you and calling you bitch and asshole in the street. I love you, but I'm just like using all your money. I love you, but I'm using your body." You know, it's not love, it's abuse. And the sooner people acknowledge this and hold these people accountable in the mind, the sooner we actually heal. So a lot of people are in certain spaces like personal development slash holistic slash entrepreneur space. You've got to be very careful because a lot of them are saying, oh, you know, just forgive and forget, or maybe you'll never forget, but you just got to forgive. You don't have to forgive anyone, right? You can still move on without forgiving someone. Did you hear what I said? You can still move on without forgiving someone, because if you are you can let them go, right, and not hold on to them anymore. But it's okay to grieve for years. If someone's treated you badly and they betrayed you, betrayed trauma can last for years. It's a grieving process. You don't have to get over it within 6 months or a year or a month or 2 years. You could be angry at them for a number of years. Yes, that might be hard for you in terms of like, yes, you're angry, but it's better that than to bottle your emotions up and repress and suppress them and act like they don't even exist. Right? So you have to deal with your own reality. If you're a person that feels like, I just can't forgive this person, that's okay. Give yourself permission to not forgive that person, but to still move on from them. That's okay. Because if you're trying to be something you're not, and you're saying, I've got to forgive this person, everyone else keeps saying to me, you've got to forgive, you've got to forgive, otherwise you won't be healed, blah, blah, blah. Right? But you can't forgive them. You're just going to be stuck in the same repressed, suppressed, upset, emotional state because society is dictating to you what you should be doing in order to be healed. You can heal by letting go of that person your own good time. You can heal by moving on from them and even not forgiving them, right? I don't forgive people in my past usually because it's like they're in my past. If they treat me badly and abuse me, there's nothing to forgive because they haven't said sorry to me. Unless a person says sorry, there's nothing to forgive. So I just move on. And, you know, like in terms of relationships, I had 2 long-term relationships. The first one I moved on from years ago. The second one, even though it's 2011, it ended, I still have dreams of that person in it. It's horrible. I don't want to. It just happens. you know? So obviously it affected me very traumatically that last time. But I was with them even longer. And, you know, I did have a deeper connection with them. We did do a lot more stuff together. So, you know, it's hard. But I have moved on. I don't ever want to be with them ever again or see them ever again. It's just very obviously emotionally difficult subconscious wise. So, you know, like grieving is each individual's own journey. And you don't have to hold yourself to, I've got to forgive this person, otherwise I can't move on. Right? Because if you actually can't forgive them, if it's not in your being to forgive them, if you're not that type of person, if you don't have that type of mechanism within you, then you're just going to be holding yourself back and hanging on to that person longer than you need to. Just release that person, say, I can let you go and move on, even though I'm not forgiving you. And that's okay. Moving on is okay. Right? Moving on is an act of self-love. Moving on is good, but also an act of self-love is recognizing your emotions, recognizing your grief, recognizing all your emotions, including negative ones, like you're angry with them, you don't like what they did, it's bad, right? And when we start to see the negative, when we start to see how people are abusive, we understand and start to understand even more what a healthy relationship looks like. One which is loving, kind, caring, honest. When you are in difficult times and you message someone, what's the reaction to the person? Is it like deep empathy? Like, are you okay? Is there anything I can do to help you? Oh, I wish I could do something to help you if I was in the same country as you. Or is it just like, oh, you'll be okay now, won't you? That's dismissing what you're saying, dismissing your current scenario. Oh, you'll be okay. You're okay now, aren't you? It's like, no, actually, I'm not okay. My foot at the moment is not okay. Right? I'm here doing this video because I'm able to do it. It makes me feel good to able to talk to you. But my injury is not good. Could be worse, but I thought I was going to have stitches at one point, but it's not been good. I've been feeling nausea earlier. I've been having stabbing pains in it. You know, I've got to watch it doesn't get infected. It's partly purple, and you know, so you know, it's not good. And sugarcoating that and pretending I'm better than I am is not good, right? I have still been doing some stuff today. I'm here streaming now, but we have to acknowledge where we're at in life, no matter what our situation is. Right? We have to be honest with ourselves, not what society dictates to us. Right? A lot of people that are healers aren't even healed. They're not fully healed. They've done a lot of healing, but they're not 100% healed. Most people aren't, if anyone, because there'll always be memories that come back that trigger you at some point. Because we can't erase all our memories. And if you erase your memories, you're like, you know, like you've blocked them out. You're kind of avoiding them. And the painful memories are a way that you can also have positive catalysts for the future, because you can understand what the problems and difficulties were, what the toxicity was, what the abuse is, so you can help prevent yourself from getting in that situation ever again. If you don't be honest with yourself about the reality of the situation, you can't do anything about it. Let me say that once again. If you can't be in your own reality, basically, of the situation, then you can't change it. You can't change what you won't admit to yourself. You can't change what you won't admit to yourself because other people's shame on you, because of other people putting you down, because of other people mocking you. Right? You can only be in your personal power the more that you realize how beautiful you are, how wonderful you are, and what you deserve. Right? It's, you know, it's difficult sometimes, especially with asexuals, when we lack communication skills sometimes, or we lack having emotional intimacy or physical intimacy with people more than others, because we are a bit more isolated in the sense that we speak a different language a lot of the time. We're asexual, so we don't speak the same language as heterosexuals all the time, if you know what I mean. We have different ways of thinking, different ways of being, different ways of thinking about certain scenarios. So that can make us pushed out and feel a bit lost, lonely, and isolated. Right. So I'd recommend going in asexual groups, going in asexual forums, in communities like this, to help you to improve your confidence and communication skills in that way, and to have people validate you and someone you can relate to. It's really important. But understand we've all got attachment issues and wounds, and usually healing is a lifelong journey. It's what you do forever, and you keep working on yourself and growing yourself forever. You grow yourself as an individual, and if you're in a friendship or relationship, you grow as a team within that by saying what you like, what you don't like, what you dislike, what's not feeling good to you, what is feeling good to you, and addressing behaviors or difficulties that, if left untalked about, is going to end up actually ruining your relationship or friendship, right? Because both people are going to, or one person at least, is going to end up resentful or not understanding the other person, you know? You can't blame someone for not understanding you if you're avoiding speaking to that person about things that would help them to understand you. So if you're an avoidant person, you're like, oh, that person doesn't understand me. What have you done to help them to understand you? Obviously, if you've got someone who's just avoidant, closed off, shut off, and like, oh, I don't understand you, I don't get you, that's because they don't want to know you. They don't want to understand you. They don't want to get you. But if you've got a person who genuinely asks questions about you because they want to get to know you and understand you, yet you're avoiding answering their questions, how can they possibly understand you if you don't open up about who you really are? And if you're putting on a facade and you're lying and you're deceiving, then they shouldn't be friends with you anyway. You should sort yourself out so you stop lying and deceiving, because these are toxic behaviors. And then you are worthy of getting good friends and healthy friends when you become that healthy, worthy person that is deserving of that worthy, helpful, healthy behavior. You can't expect to have a healthy, happy relationship if you're not healthy within yourself and you display toxic behaviors that you refuse to do anything about. If you refuse to do anything about something, then that's on you. I had a guy on a dating site the other day going, I said to him, like, I would not be in a relationship with someone unless they were 100% honest. And he said, oh, you've given me no reason to lie to you. And it's like, well, there should never be a reason to lie to anyone. So basically, the onus is on me as to where he lies to me or not, depending on what I say to him. That's just rubbish. That's not taking accountability for himself and personal responsibility. Red flag, don't bother with this type of person. I am matched from him. So, you know, you don't want to be doing that. You want someone who's healthy will be accountable for their own behavior and actions, responsible for their own behavior and actions, will want to sort difficulties and problems out in the friendship or relationship with you, will want to express themselves as much as they can around you, be themselves, will want to open up about their thoughts, feelings, emotions, will allow a degree of vulnerability with you and vice versa, will want to help you without there being an ulterior motive and vice versa, and will be supportive and reassuring and uplifting. They won't always tell you what you want to hear, though. There might be something they say that, look, when you did that, I really didn't like it. Didn't feel good to me. And like, oh, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to do that. It's not good behavior. I apologize. You know, you've both got to be willing to apologize to each other and do it. Not tit for tat, like, oh, I apologize to you, so you apologize to me. That's not healthy. Right? You've got to both be willing to apologize to each other without even struggling. If you're struggling to get an apology out of someone, then clearly they don't really want to give you an apology and don't think you deserve one, which you might very well deserve one. You know, no one should be so egotistical that they can't say sorry to you. And if you're the one saying sorry and they never say sorry to you, yet you're feeling like a bit abandoned in the friendship or relationship, you're feeling ignored, you feel like they don't value your time or worth enough, then eventually you're going to have to leave that relationship. And the sooner you leave that relationship or friendship, the better. I've come across a number of people who don't value my worth. I'd rather have less friends that value my worth than a bunch of people who don't value my worth, you know? So always bear that in mind. Anyway, I hope you found this video useful, helpful, insightful. If you have, please stick a thumbs up on it. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. Lots of love to you. And I'll see you soon next video live stream. Don't forget to hit the bell icon, like I said, because that gives you notifications of whenever I post a new video, shorts video, live video like this. And we can keep the algorithm going for asexuality. And if you're not already subscribed, check, because a lot of people that watch this channel are not actually subscribed to it. So please subscribe to it. So that really helped the channel raise awareness of asexuality. And let's become stronger together. An aceless life. Lots of love. Bye.